Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating question. How do you take sacred texts, sometimes thousands of years old, and make them speak to us today? It's way more complicated than you'd think. And believe it or not, our journey starts in a pretty unusual place.
Okay, so take a look at this. This is an AI's idea of Shoghi Effendi, who was this incredibly important 20th century translator of Baha'i scripture, as an ice hockey player. I know, it's a little weird, right? But stick with me, because this image is kind of the key to our whole story. As you're about to see, a truly great translation needs the same kind of grace, power, and split-second precision as a pro athlete on the ice.
So, what on earth does hockey have to do with ancient Arabic? Well, it turns out a whole lot. The power plays, the precision shots, even the penalties, they're all part of a translator's world. To really get it, we need to put on our detective hats.
Our investigation kicks off with a classic mystery, a piece of text that's just garbled. It doesn't make any sense, and it's our job to figure out why.
So here's clue number 1. It's a line from the Tablet of Wisdom written by Bahá'u'lláh, the founder of the Bahá'í faith. Now, the really important detail here, the thing to circle in red, is that this text was copied straight out of a PDF file.
And here's where the plot thickens. When you put the text from that PDF on the left, next to a version from a simple Word document on the right, bam, you can see the problem. The PDF version is nonsense. The phrase just falls apart. It's like a phantom player just jumped onto the ice and completely messed up the game.
So, who's this phantom player? Well, it's a piece of tech called optical character recognition, or OCR. You've used it a million times without knowing. It's what reads a scanned image and turns it into text you can copy and paste. But here's the catch. With really complex scripts like Arabic, OCR can get confused. It can literally invent words that aren't there. A modern digital glitch creating an old-school puzzle.
So the detective work here is pretty straightforward, right? First, you spot the phrase that just feels off. Then you get suspicious. You think, hey, maybe there's a phantom player here, a glitch in the system. You check it against a better source, and voila. You confirm the error, get rid of the phantom, and you've got the real text. Case closed.
But fixing a glitch? That's just the warm-up. Now that we have the authentic words, the real game starts. This is where we get to see a master's playbook in action. We're not just fixing text anymore. We're trying to create art.
Let's start by just breaking down the raw material. If you translate the Arabic word for word, this is what you get. I mean, it gives you the basic information, sure, but it's clunky. It's robotic. All of the facts are there, but none of the feeling, none of the soul. And this is where you see the difference between a rookie and a pro. On the left, you've got the robot translation. It's technically correct, but it has no flow, no rhythm. But then look at what Shoghi Effendi does on the right. It's a total power play. He swaps out greatness for glory. He transforms sovereignty into the much more powerful, overpowering majesty. See? He's not just swapping words. He's skating with the spirit of the text. And then look at this. This is the magic move. He adds that last phrase, which overshadow all created things. Now, that phrase isn't a direct word-for-word translation. It's not in the original like that. It's a masterful choice, an interpretation he added to capture the intent behind the words, this sense of a vast, all-encompassing divine power. This is where translation stops being a science and starts becoming an art form.
But hold on, there's another twist. Shoghi Effendi created this beautiful translation about 100 years ago. And language, well, it doesn't stand still, does it? So that leads us to a new question. Does this masterpiece, as amazing as it is, work perfectly for us right now in 2025?
Okay, let's look at one specific word. The original Arabic, al-Hukamah, was translated by Shoghi Effendi as men of knowledge. Now, back in the 1920s, that was a totally normal way to refer to wise people in general. But the thing is, the original Arabic word itself is gender neutral. It just means the wise ones, or sages. So this gives us a fascinating opportunity to update the translation to be a little more inclusive, and you could even argue a little more true to the original. So a modern edit might look something like this. By just swapping men of knowledge for the more neutral those sages, the translation keeps all of its power, all of its elegance, but it also becomes more welcoming and maybe even a little more precise. All right, so fixing a technical glitch is one thing, and updating a term for modern ears, that's pretty straightforward. But what happens when there isn't one correct text? What if you're faced with a whole spectrum of equally valid meanings?
Let's look at a super famous verse, 2 Timothy 1:7. We'll start with the grand old classic, the King James Version. It's just so majestic and poetic, right? And phrases like spirit of fear and sound mind, they've literally become part of the English language.
Now let's jump to a more modern translation, the NIV, and notice the change in feeling. Fear becomes the gentler timid. Sound mind becomes the much more hands-on self-discipline. The whole tone just feels a little softer, more like gentle encouragement.
And then you get this one. This is a more scholarly translation, the NRSVU, and wow, this one doesn't pull any punches. Fear is no longer just timidity, it's cowardice. That is a much sharper, more challenging word. So now what do? We've got 3 totally different flavors: fear, timidity, cowardice. Which one is right?
Well, the secret lies in the original Greek. The word delius doesn't just mean simple fear, like being scared of spiders. It carries this heavy connotation of cowardice, of a moral failing. And so phronismu isn't just self-control, it's more like a deep, disciplined wisdom. The original words are just packed with layers of meaning, giving every translator a huge range of choices.
So maybe the best way to think about this isn't which one is right, but to think of it like a playlist for your soul. Each translation is a different track for a different mood. When you need that feeling of timeless peace, you put on the KJV Classic. For some gentle reassurance, you pick the mild NIV. For a deep intellectual dive, you select the scholarly NRSVU. And if you need a real kick in the pants, you go for Martin Luther's German version, which is basically the punk rock rebuke, a total verbal sledgehammer.
So, after all this linguistic detective work, all this philosophical wrestling, where do we end up? What's the final verdict here?
Well, it turns out the real goal isn't to hunt down that one single perfect translation, because it doesn't exist. The real prize is the process itself. It's the act of engaging with the words, of comparing the different flavors, of wrestling with it all to build a meaning that's actually personal to you.
And it all comes down to this beautiful paradox of translation. The more simple and elegant a line of text sounds, the more incredibly complex and thoughtful the work was that went into creating it. That effortless flow you see in a masterwork, that's the sign of some serious, deep, layered thinking under the surface. In the end, these words might be ancient, but the act of interpreting them, of understanding them, that's always happening right now, in this moment. It's a living, breathing thing. So the final question really isn't for me, it's for you. When you're faced with all these choices, all these shades of meaning, what are you choosing to hear? Thanks for joining us.